no. Like,
Parshas Vayigash, Hamishi, the fifth Aliyah, page 256 in your Art Scroll Chumashim, if you have the Chumashim in front of you. Okay? It's Yosef, Yaakov moves to Egypt. Yosef and Yaakov reunite. We're going to really learn the beginning of this Aliyah, because the second part of the Aliyah deals with all of the names of who went down from Yaakov's family to Mitzrayim. Okay, so let's begin on page 256, Chamishi. Vayomer Yisrael, Ravod Yosef b'nichai elcha ve'erenu b'tzaram ami. And Yisrael makes this declaration in Pasuk 28. Yisrael says, how great, my son Yaakov, Yosef is still alive, and I shall go and see him before I die. Vayisa Yisrael v'chol asher alo, v'yavo be'ira shava, vayizbach zevachim le'Elohei aviv Yitzchak. So Yisrael set out, and he's now going towards Mitzrayim, and he comes to Beersheba, where he slaughters, he makes sacrifices, he brings sacrifices typical for the Avos, right? Everywhere that they go, they're building Mizbachot, and they're bringing Korbanot. And here he goes down to Beersheba, where he slaughtered sacrifices to God, the God of his father Yitzchak. Okay, continues on. Vayomer Elokim li Yisrael v'marot halayla. Now Hashem comes in a nevuah, in a prophecy, to Yaakov as Yaakov is going down to Egypt. Vayomer Yaakov, and so he comes in this prophetic vision at night, and it says, Vayomer Yaakov, Yaakov, Vayomer Hineni. And Hashem calls out to Yaakov. Yaakov, we've seen this before with the Avos. He calls him out. Rashi says always when the name is repeated, it's an indication of love, of affection. So he calls him out, Yaakov, Yaakov. And what does Yaakov answer? Hineni, here I am. Vayomer, Anochi el Elokei avicha, al tira meredam mitzrayma, ki legoy gadol asimecha sham. And he said, Hashem's now telling the prophecy to Yaakov, I am Hashem, God of your father. Have no fear. Al tira, don't worry. Don't be afraid of going to Egypt. Al tira meredam mitzrayim, ki legoy gadol asimecha sham. Because in fact, I'm going to make you a great nation there. You're going to become a great nation in Egypt. Hashem promises, not only am I going to make you a great nation, but I'm going down with you to Mitzrayim. And he continues, and I'm going to accompany you right back as well. You're going to go down, and I will be there when you come up. And he promises him, and Yosef shall place his hand on your eyes. Vayakom Yaakov mi Beersheva vayisu bnei Yisrael es Yaakov avihem es tapom es neshehem ba'agalot asher shalach paro lo seisaso. Pasuk 5. Hey, so Yaakov arose after this nevuah. He's finished with the nevuah. Hashem promises him, don't worry, don't be afraid, go down. I'm going with you. I'm coming back. You're going to become a great nation there. And so now the Torah informs us. So Yaakov actually goes down to Beersheba. He rises from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel transport Yaakov, their father, as well as the young children and their wives in the wagons which Paro had sent to transport him. Pasuk Vav. And now what does he take? They took all of their livestock and their wealth, which they had amassed in the land of Canaan, and they came to Egypt. Yaakov, with his whole family, is going. And finally, Banov uvnei Banov, ito benosov uvenos Banov v'chol zaro hevi ito Mitzrayma. And now, what does he do? His sons and his grandsons with him, his daughters and his granddaughters, and all of his offspring he brought down to Egypt with him. And then it goes on, and these are the names of all those that went to Egypt. That I'm not going to focus on today at all. I want to focus on, of course, what Rav Soloveitchik has to say on this fascinating moment in Yaakov's life, where he goes down to Mitzrayim, and he's petrified about going to Mitzrayim. And the Rav, in typical fashion, wants to learn more than just the text from a narrative, from a story. He wants to learn what can we deduce from that story in Yaakov's life to our lives. How can we apply that, what happened to Yaakov, right, thousands of years ago? How does that impact me and you in our lives? That's what the Rav wants to learn, and that's what the Rav is going to focus. And I keep on repeating, the Rav is not acting like a Rashi or a Ramban. He's not looking at every pasuk. He chooses psukim where he feels there is a lesson in particular, and then you can get a gestalt overview of the entire narrative that we're studying. So here it's just a few psukim. Yaakov, if we had to write in our own words, if I gave you a piece of paper and a pen and I said, write, I'm showing my age, right? I wouldn't give you a piece of paper and pen today. You'd take out your computers and you would I'll give you 5 minutes to summarize what these psukim say. What are you going to say? Well, Yaakov is about ready now. He's come to terms with the fact that Yosef is alive, correct? Oh, Joseph, hi, let's go. Before I die, I got to see Yosef. And he goes down, but he's petrified about going. Hashem comes to him, b'nevuah, Hashem comes to him and says to him, don't worry, I'm going to go down with you and I am going to return with you. What is all of this? And not only that, one other thing, what is it? I'm going to make you a goy gadol, a great nation when you're in Egypt. So the Rav is fascinated by, number one, what's the fear? Is it just a fear of moving? By the way, when I was in college, I remember in doing my BA in psychology, they indicated that one of the most traumatic experiences that people can have, the three most traumatic experiences psychologically a person experiences in a lifetime is, God forbid, a death of a relative. Of course, we understand that. Marriage is quite anxious. We understand that. That's a new relationship, and how is it going to work? And does anybody know? Well, they said marriage and a birth of a child, which makes sense. Those are two anxious moments in a person's life. What would be the third they indicated was moving. When a person uproots himself and moves to a new location, it is one of the most anxious experiences. Is that what Yaakov is we're told in the Torah? Yaakov is worried, he's anxious because he's moving. There's much more to it than just anxiety from moving to a new country. So let's take a look and see what the Rav has to say. So he goes to Pasuk Gimel right there, right at the very beginning of this Aliyah, and it says, Vayomer, and Hashem is seen Yaakov in a nevuah. Hashem appears to Yaakov in a nevuah. Vayomer, Pasuk Gimel, Vayomer Anochi Hakel Elokei Avicha. I am the God of your father. So there's a relationship, right? Right away, Yaakov, don't worry, Yaakov, there's a long relationship with me. It goes to your father, when your father was, your father Yitzchak, and it goes back even to Avram, of course. But he doesn't mention Avram here. He just mentions his father. So I had a relationship with your father. Al tira merda Mitzrayim. Don't worry about going to Mitzrayim. What was the fear that Yaakov had? This is the first thing that the Rav wants to know. And the Rav quotes the Ramban, Nachmanides. The Ramban has a fascinating theory. He says that when Bnei Yisrael were in Eretz Yisrael, in the land itself, we experienced what the Ramban calls Kedushat Yisrael, the sanctity of the nation of Israel. Eretz Yisrael gave us not only Kedushas Eretz Yisrael, that we understand, right? It gave us something much more, the Ramban says. When you're in Eretz Yisrael, you have a metaphysical experience called Kedushas Yisrael, which means the sanctity of being the Jewish people. And how do we define sanctity of the Jewish people? Mitzvot. What gives us our Kedusha? Our mitzvot. If that is so, and I'm positive some of you have heard this theory of the Ramban before, the Ramban says to perform mitzvot in Eretz Yisrael, that's biblically obligated of you. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, when I put on my tefillin this morning and I daven shachris, and I put on my tzitzis and I say, and my talis, etc., and I made brachos when I eat breakfast and all that, That's all wonderful, but that's not Kedushas Yisrael. That's only experienced in Eretz Yisrael. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, why do I perform mitzvahs according to Ramban? He has this theory. This theory is very famous in Nachmanides' approach that we do it so that we will know how to do it when we get back to Israel. We're practicing so we perform correctly when we finally get back to Eretz Yisrael. This is the Ramban's Shita. So the Rav picks up on that, and he says, if you're understanding this, this is what Yaakov is really worried about. Where am I leaving? I'm leaving Eretz Yisrael. I've already had an experience of leaving Eretz Yisrael. When did I leave Eretz Yisrael? Years before, where did I go? To Haran. I went to Lavan's house. When I left to Lavan's house, taking this theory to its proper conclusion, what happened? As soon as I left, remember he had the dream of the ladder up and the malachim going up and down. And what happens when he leaves Eretz Yisrael, according to this theory? He loses Kedushas Yisrael. If that's so, now he's worried, I'm going to leave Eretz Yisrael one more time, and this time I'm really going to lose. Why? Because when I left to Haran, I knew that it was supposed to be only for Yomim Achodim, the Pasuk says, which means a short period of time. It was 21, 22 years, but it wasn't hundreds of years. And now he's really worried because he knows there's a tradition in the family all the way back to his grandfather. Avram Avinu had the nevuah, the prophecy of Bris ben Habsarim. And what happened in Bris ben Habsarim? He was told your family is going to, your Jewish family is going to what? Going to be imprisoned in a land called Mitzrayim. You're going to go down there for minimum 210 years, looking at the psukim, maybe 400 plus years, right? But it's hundreds of years, the nevuah. So Yaakov, according to this theory, Rav Soloveitchik notes, is saying to himself, oh my God, I lost Kedushas Yisrael when I went to Haran, and that was only for a few years. Yomim Achadim. Now I know I'm going for hundreds of years. Am I going to lose Kedushas Yisrael in Mitzrayim? And this petrifies, this grips Yaakov, and he becomes anxious about this in a real anxiety attack, if you will. And that's why, according to the Ramban, you see this play out. When Yaakov went to Eretz Haran, when he went to Haran, to Lavan's house, he marries whom? Two sisters. Are you allowed to marry two sisters according to the Torah? No. That's a prohibition from the Torah. But if you're not obligated in Kedushas Yisrael, if Kedushas Yisrael doesn't apply to you, then you don't have to worry about the Torah, correct? So when he's in Haran, according to this theory, playing it out to its correct conclusion, when he's in Haran, he's able to marry two sisters. And when he turns to Eretz Yisrael, what happens to one of the sisters? Almost immediately, Rachel dies, because you can't be married to two sisters when you have Kedushas Yisrael. And when does he have Kedushas Yisrael? When he returns to Eretz Yisrael, according to the Ramban. So the Rav, using the Ramban, says the following. Now I know what's gripping Yaakov from an anxiety attack. What is it? He's worried. I'm now going to go down to Mitzrayim. I'm leaving Eretz Yisrael. I leave Eretz Yisrael. I lose Kedushas Yisrael. Oh my God, how will I ever regain it? And what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell him? Now take a look at the pasuk. Let's read it. Vayomer Anochi Ha'el Elokei Avicha Al Tira Me'erda Mitzrayma. Don't worry about going to Egypt. Yaakov's fear of losing Kedushas Yisrael. Don't worry. He's being told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't worry. I'm going to take you. You're not going to lose anything. You're not going to lose at all. Not only are you not going to lose Kedushas Yisrael, he continues on. Al tireh me'erda Mitzrayma. What's next words? 3 words. Ki legoy gadol. I'm going to make you something great. I'm going to make, not only are you not going to lose Kedushas Yisrael in Eretz Mitzrayim, Kedushas Yisrael is going to continue. And it's going to grow and grow and grow to a point where you're going to become a great nation in Egypt. In Egypt, you're going to gain Goy Godol. There was a further concern, Rav Soloveitchik notes, that Yaakov had. So first concern is anxiety-ridden. Am I going to lose Kedushas Yisrael like I did when I left Eretz Yisrael to Haran? I know what that is like, and I don't want to repeat that. I want Kedushas Yisrael to retain. So Hashem says, don't worry. When you're going down to Mitzrayim, this is part of the nevuah of Bris ben Absarim. You're not going to lose Kedushas Yisrael. But there was a second concern that the Rav notes. Let's go back to Bereshis Chof Ches Yud Gimel 28:13. 28:13. If you find it in your Chumashim, if you have the art scroll, it's on page 144. Let's take a look at the pasuk. Okay. Here's V'nei Hashem nitzav. Here is going to Haran, right? It's Parshas Vayetze. It's the very beginning of Parshas Vayetze. So Yaakov is leaving and running from Esav, and he's running to who eventually is going to his uncle, but eventually is going to become his father-in-law twice over, right? So he's going, and what happens in Pasuk Gimel? Hashem, well, there he has a chalom. There he lays down, right? In Beitel, and he has the dream of the ladders. V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav. Hashem stood above him, so he's having this prophetic vision. Vayomar, Ani, and Hashem speaks. Ani Hashem, I'm God. Elokei Avram Avicha. I'm the God who was the God of your grandfather. Velokei Yitzchak, and your father. Haaretz. Now this is the important word. Words. Haaretz asher atah shochev aleha. The land that your head is laying on. Where's he laying? In Beitel. That's in Eretz Yisrael. The land that you're laying on, etnol ulazarecha. I'm giving it to you and to your children. He's promised that Eretz Yisrael will be inherited by us, by his descendants. That was when he left to Haran. So Rav Soloveitchik says, well, if he's worried that he's having a repeat like Haran, where he lost Kedushas Yisrael, but interesting, you got another problem. What is it? When he went to Haran, he was promised something, that Eretz Yisrael he will come back to Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael will be inherited by his descendants. What happens here? Is there any mention that his descendants are now going to inherit Eretz Yisrael? No mention of Eretz Yisrael at all when he's going down to Mitzrayim. It doesn't say that, listen, it does say Hashem promises him here in the Aliyah that we're studying in Vayigash. Don't worry, go down to Mitzrayim. And in the words of the Ramban, you're not going to lose Kedushas Yisrael. And in the words of the Torah, you're going to become a Goy Gadol. Well, the Rav asks, well, what about Eretz Yisrael? What about the inheritance of Eretz Yisrael? We saw when he went off to Haran, he was promised that you'll come back from Haran, and your children and your grandchildren, all your descendants, they will have Eretz Yisrael. Where is that promise now? Is it violated? Is it forgotten? Why isn't it mentioned here? So the Rav notes, the reason it's not mentioned is it's not needed. Yaakov left under coercion. Yaakov had no interest whatsoever of leaving Eretz Yisrael. And it's a halachic reality that when one is coerced to do something, there is no loss of ownership, nor there is no, as the Rav says, it doesn't generate any obligations, either in loss or in benefit. Coercion is a legal status that you don't forfeit anything if you are coerced. And that's true in law by itself. If you're coerced, you don't lose your possession originally. Yaakov is leaving Mitzrayim here under coercion. Oh, he's leaving under coercion. When he left to Haran, was it under coercion? No, he was running for his own life. He wanted to get out. He knew that he had to get out. Here, he has no interest in getting out. He would have loved to stay in Eretz Yisrael. Oh, Hashem is forcing him to go because the Bris ben Absarim has to happen, right? So he's leaving under coercion. When you leave under coercion, Rav Soloveitchik notes, you don't lose Eretz Yisrael. You don't forfeit anything. We were absent from the land for 210 years. Did our absence forfeit the land as this is our ownership? No. And to this very day, this is fascinating because this is the whole argument that we're seeing today. Are we colonialists? Or are we the indigenous people? We're arguing we're the indigenous people to Eretz Yisrael. Well, here it is. But you weren't there all these years. First of all, the truth is, for thousands of years that we might have been in exile, we always had Jews in Eretz Yisrael. No question about it. We always were Jews in Eretz Yisrael. But even if we weren't, we always had a group of people living in Eretz Yisrael. But even if we weren't, when you leave because of coercion, you don't forfeit ownership. And that's why the Rav notes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't mention this to Yaakov at this moment. He's anxiety written about Kedushas Yisrael, but what about the ownership of Eretz Yisrael? Doesn't have to mention it because Yaakov knows very well he's not forfeiting any relationship to the land of Israel. Continues on, the Rav wants to know. In this pasuk, fine, we get what Al Tira Meridam Mitzrayim. What was this fear that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to absolve for Yaakov? But then it promises him something fascinating. Don't worry, you're going to go down to Egypt. Not only are you not going to lose Kedushas Yisrael, and you're not going to lose your ownership to Eretz Yisrael, right? But something else is going to happen to you in Mitzrayim. You're going to become a great nation. What in the world does it mean? What does it mean that we become a Goy Gadol? So if you open up your Haggadah Shel Pesach, by the way, it addresses this issue. It says, Goy Gadol, Mitsuyonim Sham. Remember those words? We became an excellent people. We excelled. We became, but I would give the translation to Mitsuyonim a little different. It's not only we excelled, we became a distinct and unique people. That's what Mitsuyonim means. We became a distinct and unique people. But how does that manifest itself in the world? What was it that was distinct about the Jew? So the Rav first uses Tanakh to answer the question, and then uses Chazal to answer the question. So how would you answer Goy Gadol from a methodological way? How would you answer this kind of a question in Tanakh? What you would do is you'd find a pasuk, if there is one, that gives you the answer. And the Rav finds a pasuk perfectly, where the Torah tells us exactly what Goy Gadol means. If you have a full chumash in front of you, please go to Devarim, Perek Dalid, pasuk Ches. It's in Parshas Va'eschanon, Perek Dalid 4:8, and it's on page 960 if you have an art scroll in front of you. Parshas Va'eschanon in Devarim. The Torah, the Rav says, gives me the answer, what Goy Gadol means. Umi Goy Gadol, asher lo chukim u'mishpatim tzadikim, kechol ha'torah azos, asher anochi nosein lifnechem hayom. Pasuk Ches, pasuk 8, and which is a great nation that has a righteous decrees and ordinances such as this entire Torah that I place before you this day. How do we translate Goy Gadol? How's Goy Gadol being translated in this pasuk? Torah mitzvos, righteousness, morality. If you're a people that has a moral compass, then you become a Goy Gadol. So the Rav notes, you can be economically the most powerful country in the world. You can be militarily the most powerful country in the world, right? That doesn't make you a Goy Gadol. A Goy Gadol, how is a Goy Gadol being defined by the Torah? Not economics, not might, not power, but rather your feature that it makes you distinct is your morality. Take a look at the pasuk. Asher lo chukim u'mishpatim. You have rules and laws. Tzadikim kechol haTorah azos that make you righteous. You have a moral compass. Oh, you have a moral compass? That's the definition of a Goy Gadol. So the first answer is What is this Goy Gadol that's going to emerge from Egypt? It's a people that has a moral compass. They feel for the person who is being oppressed because we went through oppression, right? That was the whole experience of Egypt. We'll know what oppression is, and we will literally stop it whenever we see it. We have a moral compass. Okay, that's the Torah's answer. So answer number one is, how would you define Goy Gadol? What's unique and about the and what is the characteristics of the Jewish people that's unique and distinct? Number one, the Torah tells us it's a moral compass. That then the Rav goes and looks at Chazal. Let's go to Torah Shabbal Peh. And the Rav takes us to a Gemara in Psachim, Kuf Yud Zayin Amid Beis, in Psachim 117b. The Gemara states the following: I will make you a Goy Gadol. It's quoting this pasuk. I will make you a Goy Gadol. Hashem promises Yaakov, I'm going to make you a Goy Gadol in Egypt. Therefore, the Gemara says, what does Goy Gadol mean? We say in the Amida, Elokei Avraham. Because we're a Goy Gadol, we say in the Amida, in the Shmona Esrei, the words Elokei Avraham, the God of Avraham. What in the world does that Gemara mean? So Rav Soloveitchik brilliantly explains that Gemara as follows. A Goy Gadol is a nation that knows how to pray, how to daven. What do you mean you know how to daven? A nation knows how to daven. It indicates that the nation feels the pain for the other who's oppressed. This morning in shul, I said a special mishaberach for a few people that are sick. Not only did that, we did it, of course, every morning and every afternoon. We daven for the chayalim and we daven for the hostages. What is that? What is that prayer? What are those prayers? So this morning, a special mishaberach for 3 people who are having surgeries. Why do we do that? Because I feel the pain. We feel the pain for those in need. When I daven, it indicates that I am sensitive to the needs of the other. That's what the Gemara is teaching us. A nation that is concerned about the well-being of every member of that people, that's a praying nation. That's how the Rav understands that Gemara. Goy Gadol, it's a praying nation. They know this, as the Rav would frame it, they know the secret of prayer. There are 2 secrets of prayer. Number 1, feeling the pain and the needs of the other. And what's the second thing about prayer? It's humility. Why is humility so connected with prayer? What does, by praying, what are you saying? I can't do it on my own. I can't be a success on my own. I need divine help. I need a help way beyond myself. I can't accomplish success on my own. Hashem, I need you. Right? You're partnering. We're going to be partners in this. But without you, I know I will not be a success. So 2 lessons of a Goy Gadol from the Gemara. Number 1, we're a nation that knows to feel for the other. And number 2, we have a humility. So how does the Rav define Goy Gadol? From the Gemara, from the Chumash, it teaches us the unique, distinct feature is we have a moral compass. And from the Gemara, it teaches us we are a people that cares about the other and that is humble and not haughty in thinking that we can do it ourselves. And then the Rav continues on, Ki Goy Gadol asimecha sham. All in this pasuk, it's teaching us way beyond what Yaakov just hearing. This applies to our lives, the Rav notes. And he's promised, and I shall establish for you as a great nation there. What does that mean? So what do you mean goy? What does the word goy mean? So he quotes the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says the word goy comes from gviyah. Gimel vav yud hey. Gviyah means your countenance, your form. In other words, goy refers to what makes the nation look the way it is. When you look at the Jew, you see something. What do you see? Well, you see a few things. First of all, by the way, statistics have shown this for years. We are the most philanthropic people on the face of the earth. We know that. Even this whole discussion about the Ivy League colleges, right? Who's putting pressure on the universities? It's Jews because they're philanthropic. They've been giving millions and millions and millions of dollars to these campuses, to these universities, and they're saying, hey, and you hate us? Well, maybe we shouldn't be giving our millions and millions and millions of dollars to these institutions. They're waking up and saying. My point is, this is the unique feature of the Jew. The Jew is a philanthropic people. What is the gviyah? What is the form? What is the countenance of the Jew? And so the Rav quotes the Medrash, the famous Medrash that says, for 4 reasons we were able to be redeemed from Egypt. Number 1, we didn't change our names. In other words, we didn't hide from our identity. Number 2, we didn't change our language. This is a Medrash in Vayikra Rabbah. Number 3, we didn't harbor informers. In other words, we didn't tolerate Lashon Hara. And number 4, we didn't tolerate licentiousness among our people. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, the Medrash says, that these are when you look at the Jewish people. I remember the Rav saying this in Shir. He says, one thing you can't say about the Jewish people is that we're involved in brutal violence. That's not our personality. We do bad things, but usually it's white collar sins. That's what it usually is. But we're not involved in Hayadayim Yedei Esav. It's Hakol Kol Yaakov, right? So the Rav notes that. Or another Medrash, the Medrash says, if you want to know if a person's Jewish, there are 3 tests. Does anybody remember the 3 tests? He has to be modest, humble, right? Kind. If a person's not a Gomel Chasadim, check his lineage. He is not part of the Jewish people. And he has to be bashful. Now, those are the 3. He has to have a guilt complex, right? And Jews have that. Jews have guilt complexes. We got that in our blood, right? Through the milk from our mother. These are the 3 criteria. This is the geviyah, if you will. So the Rav understands. What is the geviyah? What is the face of the Jew throughout history? And that's how he understands. We're going to become the goy gadol. We're going to gain a countenance, a facial look to us. And what's that facial look? What's that description of the Jew? Bashful, modest, kind. He has an identity that he's proud of, and he retains that identity, and he doesn't give it up. He speaks the same language, and he doesn't give up his language. He doesn't tolerate informers, and he doesn't believe in a lack of tzniut. Okay, interesting approach to understanding what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Yaakov, which means it has a tremendous impact on Hayom Hazeh, on us. Continues on, the Rav goes on to the next pasuk. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has promised Yaakov, don't worry, you're going to go down. And then he says, Anochi ered imcha Mitzrayma, I'm going to go down with you. The Anochi a'alcha gam olo, and I'm going to take you up as well. These words demonstrate, what is this HaKadosh Baruch Hu promising us? What's HaKadosh Baruch Hu? I'm going down and I'm going up with you. What is this telling us? Excuse me 2 seconds. So what is it telling us? It's telling us the following, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a very close relationship with us. He's the Shekhinah, went down with us, and the Shekhinah is going to come up with us. Anochi imcha b'tzara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is right with us in the times of oppression, and is with us in the times of glory as well. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not just with us when we're successful. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us when we're in trouble as well. The Jew should never ever feel, this pasuk is teaching through Yaakov, he should never ever feel that he is alone. He always has Hashem at his side. A very important lesson for us as we go through this terrible time in Jewish history. Anochi eredim cho Mitzrayma v'anochi alcho gam ola. I am never going to leave you. I'm going to be by your side. You might not understand all my secrets. Of course you can't. I'm infinite and you're finite. You're not going to understand. But know what is Yaakov being told? What are we being told? Never lose that faith. Hashem is going to go down and Hashem is going to come up. When you're down and out and under and everything looks bleak and black, no, Hashem is going to be with you. Okay, continue on. V'anochi alcha gam ola, and I will also bring you up. This is an amazing pasuk because it was said to Yaakov. Yaakov is being promised what? Something that's impossible. V'anochi alcha gam ola, and I will also bring you up. By the time we left Egypt, Yaakov was long since dead. Yaakov dies hundreds of years before. Is this fake news? Is this not true? What's going on? What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu promising? I'll take you down. I'll go down with you, but I'm coming up with you? Excuse me, Yaakov was hundreds of years died before we left Egypt. So what is the answer? Yes, if you were looking just from a biological individual, Yaakov was dead. But is Yaakov just a biological individual? Not at all. Yaakov is a historic personality. Yaakov is you and me. Yaakov is Klal Yisrael throughout the centuries. That's what Yaakov means. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is speaking to Yaakov, is he only speaking to Yaakov as Yaakov? No, he's speaking to you and me thousands and thousands of years after Yaakov has this nevuah. Eredim cho Mitzrayma, I'm going to go down when it's black and miserable outside. V'anochi alcho gam ola, and when you have the success, I will be there with you as well. Because it's not referring to a Yaakov, just a biological Yaakov. It's referring to the historical Yaakov, which we are part of. Continues on, the Rav says, Vayakom Yaakov mi Beersheva. So Yaakov goes down to Beersheva after having this nevuah. And take a look at what happens here. Vayisu v'nei Yisrael es Yaakov aviem. And the sons of Yisrael carried their father Yaakov. What does this mean? Vayisu b'nei Yisrael es Yaakov aviem. It sounds like they didn't put him in an agalah in the wagons. Remember, there are wagons there to take them down. It sounds like they literally lifted him. They carried him. It reminds me, as the Rav notes, of another time where lifting and carrying are mentioned. When is that? The Mishkan. When the Torah documents how the Mishkan is moved from location to location, and how the clay Mishkan, how the appurtenances of the Mishkan are moved from location to location. What are you not allowed to do? You're not allowed to place the Aron in a wagon, right? The Aron must be carried by the staffs on the shoulders of the Levium. The Levium may not place and rest the Aron in a wagon. It must be carried. If this is true about an inanimate object called the Aseres Hadibros, that's stone, right? How much more should we treat the Torah, a living Torah? Who is the living Torah? Yaakov. Yaakov should not be put in a wagon, and neither should the Aron. So this reminds us of what? The Gemara. The Gemara says the following. He says, the fool is the person who stands up when he sees a Torah passing by, but he remains seated when he sees a great Torah scholar passing by. He stood up for the Torah, but he didn't stand up for the living Torah. That's what the Gemara says. You certainly, the Torah is parchment and ink. Oh, you stood up for that. But what about the great Torah scholar, right? Then you certainly have to stand up. Why? Because he's not an inanimate object. He's a person who's taken the Torah and literally internalized it into him. So the Gemara says, oh, that's pshat. Vayisu b'nei Yisrael es Yaakov aviem, the Rav notes. Literally what we're being taught is the derech eretz that they had for their father. They lifted their father. They realized their father, I don't know if they lifted it physically, but the pasuk is telling us that they showed, they demonstrated that they realized the value of who their father was. Yaakov was not just a human being, but Yaakov was Yaakov Avinu. And that's was the living Torah. And just like you have to lift the Aron, you have to lift a Yaakov. Continues on. Interesting, now we got a problem. So it says they lift Yaakov, right? Ba'agalot asher shalach Paro, for the agalot that Paro sent. So they put the children and the daughter and the grandchildren in the agalot. They lift Yaakov, but they put everybody else in the agalot. Agalot of whom? Who sent them? Paro? Well, let's go back to 45:27. Mem Hey Pasuk Chav Zayin, just a few pages before, one page before, actually, right? The page 256 in the Chumash, Vayidabru Elav es kol divrei Yosef, asher diber aleim vayar es ha'agalos. What's the next word? Asher shalach Yosef. Which one is it? Is it Yosef that sent the wagons, or is it Paro? The original pasuk says Yaakov believed that Yosef was alive when he saw the agalot that Yosef sent, and now we're told. And when they went down to Egypt, he placed the women and children into the agalot that Paro sent. Which one is it? Who sent it? Did Paro send the agalot, or did Yosef? So Rav Soloveitchik answers, you have to understand what's going on here. Of course, Paro sent them. The wagons could not leave Egypt. The wagons was like the ultimate weapon of the time, and only with the signature of Paro could they leave the borders of Egypt. So who permitted them to leave Egypt? It was Paro, as this pasuk says. But Paro's agalot wasn't what impressed Yaakov. Yaakov, if you will, saw when he believed that Yosef was alive when he saw Yosef's agalot. They're the same agalot. But when he saw Yosef's agalot, what does the Medrash say? He remembered the last learning that he had with his father. A play on words, agalot, 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 and egla arufa. The last thing he learned with his father before he was taken and sold into Egypt was egla arufa. When Yaakov saw the wagons and he believed Yosef was alive, what do you mean he saw egla? It's a play on words? No. So Rabbi Soloveitchik notes the following. He cross-examined the boys. And he said, tell me about this person who's viceroy in Egypt. You claim it's your brother. You claim it's my son Yosef. And so they proved it to Yosef. To Yaakov. Yes, it's your son Yosef. Yes, it's our brother Yosef. You know how we know? Because what does Egla Arufa teach you? Egla Arufa, remember the story of Egla Arufa? It's found in Parsha Shoftim in Devarim, where you find a dead body between two cities, and you do not know who killed that person. What do? You measure to the closest city between the two cities. From the body, you measure to the... And what happens? They do a whole ritual. And what's the ritual? The Zakanim, the leaders of the community, come out and they say, our hands did not spill this blood. Our hands are not responsible. We understand responsibility of leadership. Leaders can't ignore running the country, running the people, being responsible. If things go wrong, who has to take the fall? Egla Arufa teaches us the leaders take the fall. When things go wrong, it's an Egla Arufa lesson. And Yosef was sending a message to his father, and his brothers were telling Yaakov, you taught Yosef, the last thing you taught Yosef is the morality of Jewish leadership. And that's exactly what he wants you to know. Everything he learned, it was from you, Abba. And that's who Yosef is. Yosef is the one who is now the leader in Egypt. He's your son. It's the Agalot Shel Yosef that convinced Yaakov that Yosef was alive. But who sent the literal agalot? Pharaoh. That's correct. But so it's two different things, if you will. This pasuk is telling us the literal. The earlier pasuk was telling us, if you will, the between the lines message to Yaakov, and that's why suddenly Yaakov, according to Chazal, said, "Okay, O Yosef Chai, O Yosef B'ni Chai, my son Yosef is alive." When did he realize that? When he realized that he had followed his father's lesson of Jewish leadership. Jewish leadership has one word that guides it. It's called responsibility. A Jewish leader is responsible. He has to take responsibility. She has to take responsibility. The leader is a person who takes responsibility. And the Egla Arufa was the ultimate lesson that Yaakov taught Yosef, and Yosef literally implemented as the leader in Egypt. We know that, right? Because what did he do? He not only, back last week in Miketz, he not only explained the dreams to Paro, but what did he do? He suggested exactly how to implement, how to save the world of the time from the famine that was coming. He created a sense of responsibility. He could have said nothing. He could have wiped his hands, but not if you understand the lesson of a Jewish leader. The lesson of a Jewish leader has to take responsibility for all those in need. Okay, so the Rav understands this whole story of Yaakov going down to Mitzrayim, not that Yaakov individually was petrified and had anxiety about going to Mitzrayim. It's us, his descendants, that we should place ourselves in this story. What do we learn from this story of Yaakov going down to Mitzrayim? Number one, we learned that Yaakov was concerned, through the eyes of the Ramban, the Rav notes, Yaakov was concerned, if I leave Eretz Yisrael, do I lose Kedushas Yisrael? Do I lose my relationship to the mitzvos? And what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say? No, down in Mitzrayim, you're not going to lose it. Your Kedushas Yisrael will not be, and not only will not be lost, but you will become a Goy Gadol. And the Rav says, what's Goy Gadol? And he gave us two answers, right? One from the Torah, Goy Gadol means a nation that has a moral compass. And one from the Gemara, what does Goy Gadol mean? A nation that knows the secret and how to pray. It has humility, and it has a relationship of feeling for the other who's in pain. That's what you do when you pray, right? Rifa'enu, you daven for the refuah for those who are in need. That secret, it makes us Goy Gadol. And that's the Gviyah of the Rav points out. The Vilna Gaon says, what does Goy Gadol mean? It's when you see the nation, what does it represent to you? What is it demonstrating? What is it manifesting to the world? The Gviyah of the Jewish people, as the Medrash says, we didn't give up our language. We were modest. We didn't have Lashon Hara, right? We weren't licentious. We had a certain sense of, when you looked at the Jew, as the Gemara says, he was a Baal Chesed, the Medrash says he was a Baal Chesed, and he cares, and he's humble. That's the Jew. That's the Gviyah. That's what makes us a Goy Gadol. It's true, Ara Yom Hazeh, whenever any nation is in need, the first nation to immediately send help, assistance, is Medinat Israel. Why? Because that's the Goy Gadol. That is our DNA. That's what this is. That's what Goy Gadol means. What's our DNA? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Yaakov, that's your DNA of your people. That is going to be developed in Mitzrayim. Why is it going to be developed in Mitzrayim, by the way? So the pasuk says in Devarim. Why? Because you're going to know what oppression is. And when you experience that, you'll never do it to anyone else. You know the misery of oppression, and you will never do it to anyone else. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises Yaakov, I'm going to go down with you, and I'm going to come up with you. So the question was, Yaakov, how could Hashem take Yaakov up? It's going to be hundreds of years from now, and Yaakov is going to long since be dead, because Yaakov is not the biological Yaakov that the Torah is talking about in these psukim, but Yaakov is the historic Yaakov. It's you and me that he will bring out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us that don't worry, I will go down with you and I will return with you. You will never be alone. And finally, the Rav notes, how did Yaakov go down? His sons appreciated the unique feature of their father. They realized their Abba was a living Torah. So they lifted, if you will, certainly it doesn't poetically, right? It doesn't necessarily mean they carried him, for the hundreds and hundreds of miles, literally, but they showed derech eretz to their father. They lifted him in that sense. They demonstrated kavod for their father because they realized their father was the living testimony of the Torah. Okay, that's how the Rav learns the lessons that we can see from Yaakov going down to Mitzrayim in this fifth Aliyah in Vayigash. Okay, everybody should have a wonderful week. Okay. Next week I'm out of town. I'm in Eretz Yisrael, so Parshas Vayechi there won't be a shir, but Bezrat Hashem Shemos will regroup again.
Rabbi, it's Shelley Rube. I'm wishing you a wonderful, safe, good shalom trip.
Thank you, Shelley. Amen.
You're welcome.
Amen.
Thank you for the shir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody should have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.